our first question: how to handle a situation when someone is aggressive towards you in front of others. Does this response change based on the chain of command? Address for both if you are above or below in their level of authority. So we'll start. Is there one of you that wants to go first? Karen?
Honestly, if someone is aggressive towards you in the workplace, and let's face it, we come to this from, there's how many people on this call and how many varieties of workplaces, and it might be in an office setting, it could be in the shop, for those of us who are hands-on working in in mechanical type jobs, or it could be anywhere. If someone's ever aggressive or trying to create conflict with you, I really believe that the best thing that you can do is center yourself, and how you carry yourself in the workplace really does affect how people perceive you. And if someone's aggressive towards you and is making you feel uncomfortable, you got to check up your emotions, and you need to respond in a way that is more assertive, I'd say, than aggressive. And you kind of have to not get pulled into their drama, is the way I would say it, because they're the one being aggressive, and don't let them define you by allowing them to pull you into and get your emotions up, and then you look the fool, quite frankly, and you don't want that. So we can't be in charge of what other people do. We can only be in charge of our own emotions and our responses. So you're always going to try and just not engage in the conflict, and don't make the situation worse. That would be the first, right off the top of for advice that I would give.
Awesome, thank you.
I'll add to Karen's. So I see a wide variety of people, younger and older. And so I thought about some of these questions before we had this, and I would like to advise or tell my stories of, like, when I first came in, I was the only female in an all male lab. So it was very intimidating. And I will say how I was then and how I was before I left Ford changed, because I truly believe in that verbiage of, you, as you get older, you get wiser and you learn from your mistakes. But one thing I want to say is that you have to pull yourself together, like Karen says. Keep it together, but there's nothing wrong with going home and letting it out, having someone to vent to after, and really bounce what happened off on someone else, because you can get emotionally charged. There's also nothing wrong going in the bathroom and crying it out and then coming back. It's okay. And there's many times I've wanted to do that, but you have to suck it up, buttercup, and get through it, but don't let your emotions get to you. That is a very key thing, because that's the first thing that people want to pounce on, and people always want to go after weakness. And then the other thing is to always keep the company we keep are people we want to be around. And you're going to have people of all kinds not being on your side, jealous of you, but also you're going to have people that support you. That's why Mike's here, because we think Mike is awesome. He's recognized this in a lot of us over the years. And I would like to say that you need to have those people in your corner, whether it's in your department, your shop, in your life, to help you get through these things, and how to bounce those things. And these, if someone's aggressive, how do you handle it? And then I'd like to lead into how do you handle it is, if something's really bad, then you need to address it. If someone's, God forbid, making inappropriate things towards you, you need to address it. Don't let them get away with it, but talk about it first. Don't blow up, and try to solve it and put it to bed and move on, and don't bring it up again. That's just,
yeah. I agree with both you guys. It's keeping calm, which is always hard for a hot-blooded Italian like me. Staying calm during that situation, trying to understand, looking at the person's body language, trying to understand what they're trying to say, trying not to interrupt them, and letting them talk it out. Where I draw the line is if they come after an employee. The customer is not always right, and as much as we want them to be, and as much as we all probably want to serve that customer, I draw the line if they come after one of my staff or one of my employees.
I like your guys' answers. I definitely agree with those. And the one thing that I do like the fact is, I think in the SBN or in these with SEMA, we found a lot of good friends that we've been able to have as a support, like you guys have said too. So awesome.
Yeah. And Sarah, I'll throw in one other thought. And I think Sherry had alluded to this. You really need to, over the course of your life, you need to find your tribe. We talk about this all the time about, you know, you're actually the summation of all the people you surround yourself with. So if you want to rise, or you want to become proficient at anything, you need to put yourself in a place that you're surrounded with people who are supporting you. So you have to become, there's people you need to walk out of your life sometimes, you know, and then you need to have, like I have, trust me, I worked on the flight line on B-52s. I've been on dirt tracks, slammed into the wall. Like there's a million ways that people can be aggressive towards you and make your life a misery. But if you have a tribe, and I have people who I can call, I can just pick up the phone and go, you know what, I need to vent. And I think Sherry had spoken about this, and it's true. You need to be able to let those emotions out and find a good avenue for them. And there's, you know, really do some picking about who you have in your life around you. And if you need to find better friends, do it.
Couldn't agree more.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. We have a couple questions here. Advice for when you notice one of the people you manage being more aggressive rather than assertive to their direct reports.
Mm-hmm.
Can you remind them that it doesn't always stick? How can you facilitate long-term change on how the supervisor interacts with their employees?
Okay. And I'll be happy to speak to this one if my colleagues are okay with it.
Yep.
Okay. You know, one of the things in preparing for this this virtual educational session is we each had a small topic, subtopic to this. And the one that I looked into and was going to share, you know, kind of broadly anyway, was about the difference and how you balance being assertive versus being aggressive. And if you have someone who, you know, it's a fine line, just like most of the things we do in our life, balance is everything. So you have to be able to be assertive. And when you're assertive, you are advocating for yourself, and you have standing in and of yourself in this position. If someone is being aggressive, they've crossed the line from being assertive, and they've gone into, and usually the aggressive piece will be, you know, their emotions, they're using bad language or something that's totally, you know, just completely inappropriate. There is a difference. And how you get people, if you're supervising, and I'm trying to understand the question, is it coming from someone who's trying to supervise people and, you know, get them back into being assertive versus being aggressive, which is what I think they're doing. You know, the only way to really bring somebody back is to have a conversation with them. And it may not be appropriate in the moment when they're being aggressive. So you have to be assertive with people in the right moment. So you never want to try and fix things when it's already, you know, a lit up situation. You want to wait till everything calms down, but you cannot not address it. So like you said, I think the person had, the question they had said was, you know, they're trying to get people to change, but it's not sticking. And so all you can do is just, it's like being the broken record. Just keep at it, and be relentless, and don't let your guard down. And if people cross the line with you, you have to show that you are going to fight for your position.
I agree. It's all about being honest with your staff and your employees. And if you do see a situation, you know, you have to understand both sides of it, right? You have to understand the supervisor and the employee. And you have to talk to both of them. And there's times when you have to bring them both into the room, but you got to be honest and open about it. And you got to be able to call it out, you know, too many times I think we'd like to just sweep it under the carpet or say, I'll get it next time, or and that doesn't solve it, right? It just festers. And so, you know, and at the end of the day, sometimes there's a personality conflict. Sometimes it's something someone's done in the past and they're going to get them back. You just have to, get through all of that. You got to have, you know, a good team, and a good team that wants to work together, because it'll break you. It'll break your ability to move the ball forward if we're not all pulling on the same rope at the same time.
And one comment I'd like, just quick comment to both of them, is that lead by example, because if you lead by example, then your team watches you, and you never realize that until someone comes back and tells you that. So just remember, just like a parent with kids, lead by example.
Our next topic is recommendations on how to follow up after an uncomfortable encounter. How should you act, things you should do to create a better work situation. Note, email, should you stop by their office and do it in person? What is your suggestion on that?
Yeah, so I'd like to start. Just, I don't like to, when there's been something has to be addressed, I really like to find time, close the door, sit face to face with the person. If you're going to do an email, it's just, it may be something to follow up afterwards, to say, I'm glad we had this time to talk today. Here's the things we discussed. Here's the things I'd like you to work on, so that it is in writing for follow up, you know, maybe during review time or those sorts of times. You know, this pandemic has hurt a lot of things. I just think that human relationship, that person to person talk, that ability to, you know, break down the barriers is really, really critical. And whether that's on Skype or whether that's in person, I just think that takes, you know, this is our second family, right? When you're at work, this is, you know, I spend more time at the office than I do at home most of the time. And so you have to have that sort of relationship again with your employees and, you know, with other departments, or you just can't move the ball. You can't do, these things get in the way, and you got to address them. So face to face is my recommendation.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, I know I'm not one of the speakers, but I think through email sometimes, or text, it doesn't, the emotions don't come off correctly. So it's better to have a face-to-face conversation and be able to get that out better. But yeah, Sherry, this question is for you. Have there been situations that you wish you had handled in a different way? Do you have like detailed or situations that you've been in?
So I kind of already jumped in that a little bit when I spoke on the first topic, but I'll add to that. Some of the things to those situations early on in my career versus later, and my thing I would like to also add would be, remember, we're all a team whenever we're on a project, and we all bring a strength and a weakness. When you bring us all together and we have that together, we can always pull together and have a great result. And one of the things in situations I've always done is, because 90% of the time in my career forward, I've been the only woman in the room, and it just became normal for me. And I remember a time where I'm sitting there trying to actually vet out project vehicles and how we're going to do this and what we're going to do. And we came out of a meeting, and this female was new to the situation, and we walked out of there and she's like, how did you herd all those cats? Oh my gosh, how did you get them to all come together? And it's taken years, I'm not going to lie. And it's just not doing the project vehicle selections, it's doing other things and trying to get everybody in their opinions and get their agendas and motivations together. And you got to read the room, and you got to hone your people skills. And when you get to read the room or even know who's going to be in attendance, you kind of also anticipate some of those things that could happen. And when you anticipate those things, you can plan ahead, just like everything else. If you're going to do a speech or a seminar, or even like this, we've thought through some of these questions and how we would answer. Think about the what ifs, not to an anxiety level, but, you know, just prepare yourself so you know how to handle things, and be more, and it helps you to be more calm. And that's something I've done. But as herding cats sometimes can be very, very difficult. And you might not have all the answers, and you're not going to please everybody. And that's the one thing you got to understand, and stay true to yourself. And if someone challenges you, always politely say, I don't have an answer for that, but I will follow up with you afterwards. Because sometimes people want to challenge you to test your ability to handle things, and stay strong, and just, you got to be genuine and true to yourself.
Okay. We had a question. I mean, it's a little bit different, but kind of in the same thing. It says, how would you handle an employee who goes around you and directly to your boss after you made a decision they didn't agree with? Or as the boss, how would you handle that?
Good question, because, oh boy, I've had that happen many, many times. And how would I handle it? I guess I come from the corporate side. Not that it's a little bit of different dynamic. But if I were to know about it, and typically you find out, I do sit with my boss and I ask, how can we handle this situation? And talk it out with my boss. Or go to a mentor, because we have a lot of mentorship going on when you're at a corporation like Ford. So I would go to someone and ask how to handle that. And then again, like Mike says, maybe just kind of approach that person in a private setting and say, hey, I want to get along. I want to do this. We're all on the team together. Let's figure out how we can get there together. Sometimes, it's really funny. Sometimes it ends up being a jealousy thing. I'm surprised at that. That just boggles my mind. But once you break that down and get personal with somebody and talk shop, so to speak, that can change things. So I know every situation is different, and it is very frustrating as a person that if someone goes around you, but try to figure it out, stand your ground to try to resolve the issue.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. All right. This next question is for Karen. Do you have tips on how to balance being both assertive and aggressive?
Absolutely. And thank you for that question. There are ways to be assertive, and I'm just not even going to say the whole word, but you never want to be like the bee. Like you don't want to be known as that. And there will be people who will define you as that because you are assertive, and you just have to kind of get good with it. And you say, you know what, whatever. So the first thing, and number one tip I'd give to anybody is be the best at what you do. If you are the best at what you do, no one can argue with you, with your talent. You let your work and your work ethic speak for itself. So the first thing when it comes to being assertive is to look inside and figure out what you need to do to be the best. Never go into a job or into a task as a poser. And I'll use the word poser, because we have people who say they do this and this and this, and you know what? It's all smoke and mirrors. They can't do anything. And they sell themselves to everybody as the pro, and quite frankly, they're not. So be the best that you can possibly be. No one can argue with excellence. And so when it comes to the time to be assertive, it's easy to be assertive when you have standing, and that comes from self-confidence. So the other piece is you need to examine your life and your own goals. How can you become so self-confident that no one can really, they can't argue with you? And I'll go to the racetrack as a, here's an example. People can talk and all this stuff in the pits, and it's like, let's just shut up and drive. Let's just all get out there on the track and we'll see who gets to the finish first. It's a simple thing. So if you apply that, just to the workplace, say, okay, whatever it is you're doing, be the best at it. And your work and your performance will shine. The other piece is always be calm. Know that you have standing. So when you are advocating for yourself, you have every right to advocate for yourself. So on the assertive side, know that you have standing, be calm, be honest, and always be direct. And don't be the drama queen. And I'll just say it, and you could be the drama king. Don't be the person in the workplace that's always going around and creating drama. Like people, it just is, it's useless. So I suppose those are and then honestly, and this as a salute to Mike and to Sherry and others here, mentor others. When people see you as a mentor and you're willing to invest in others, it gives you a completely different standing in the workplace. So help others, turn around, reach back, help other people.
So this next question is for Mike. How to handle a situation when it involves a customer or contractor? Very separate situations, so should these be addressed differently?
Sure. Let me back up for one quick second about the mentoring side of this. And you know, if I've had any success in life, it's because I've been able to surround myself with very talented people, and I look for talent. And you know, I like to spend my time with those that can all better ourselves. And so, you know, when I do look for mentoring, I look for talent, and there's so much raw talent. You know, I don't care if it's man or woman, but I like to be around those people, and I like to help them anywhere I can. So it's because you guys are talented that I've been able to enjoy that time, and you know, there were people that helped me along, and I want to, you know, pay that back. You know, going to your question, you know, a lot of these things have been written about before, but and we talked about some of them, but again, I think it's trying to remain calm, you know, when you have an aggressive customer. You know, looking at their body language, looking at what they're being aggressive about. You know, ask for an explanation of the problem, and then try not to interrupt. Let them, you know, there's plenty of times we want to jump in and stop them or answer the question. And listening is always hard, just as it is remaining calm, but I think you have to do that. And then once they've had a chance to air it out, you know, I try to go back and repeat what I'm hearing. So I use words like, you know, so what I'm hearing is this what it is you're angry about? What I'm hearing is this situation. And then acknowledge and understand their frustration. You know, we need to acknowledge that, and that tends to diffuse them so many times. Something I learned really early on, I worked at a car dealership right out of high school, and the manager had a saying on his wall that said, you know, walk a mile in their shoes. So try to understand what their situation is, even if you think they're wrong. Everybody has bad days. You know, there are those that do want to take advantage of you. You know, there are those that do want something cheaper, you know, try to get the best of you, you know, want something for free, and you got to try to understand that. You know, I also ask questions like, how can I make you feel more comfortable? The one thing I have learned is, you know, I think so many of us want to fix it right then and there. And don't be afraid not to be able to fix it right then and there. Don't be afraid to say, look, I gotta take all this into consideration. You know, I want to get back to you, you know, those sorts of things. We especially because we're always busy, right? We want to fix the thing and move on to the next problem. And I think there's just times when you got to say, I got to think this through. I got to contemplate it. Don't be afraid to be that vulnerable and say, you know, I don't have all the answers right now. Let me find a way to get back to you. At least that, and then give them a time, and then you'll be back to them. You know, don't look like you're brushing them off. Say, you know, look, I need to walk this through. I need to look at some things myself. I need to think this through. If you can solve it, then great, solve it. The customer is not always right. I know we've all been trained on that. There's times when the customer isn't right, and again, especially if you think they're taking advantage of you. So, you know, those are the sorts of things, you know, that I try to work on. I also, you know, quickly, my father was in the restaurant business, and so I always have felt that with customer service. You know, there's times when you go to the best restaurant in town, and if the service is lousy, you'll never go back. And you'll go to a restaurant that maybe the food isn't great, but you know, you walk in and they say, "Hey, Sarah, how are you today? And what's going on? And is that a new vehicle you got?" or something like that. You know, it's that where everybody knows your name sort of feel. And I think that's an important part of customer service, is making that person comfortable, making that person feel at home. I try to model that anywhere I can, try to have that relationship. And, you know, I've tried to do that all my life. You know, with a contractor, it's a lot different, right? You're, anytime there's a customer, you want to try to solve that customer's problem. You know, we all know customers are hard to get. It's that saying about, for every customer you please, he tells 5, and for everyone you get mad, he tells 10. And so you do try to work hard at customers. A contractor can be different, always. And I'm even doing this right now with some remodeling at home. And we've got this Detroit garage that we're working on. And so I try to always start with the RFQ, really understanding what that request is. Before we hire that contractor, you know, what is it exactly that you want, and try to really get detailed on what that project is in any particular case. I'll give you an example again. On a remodel, I get down to how many plugs I want on the walls and what location I want them in, because those things come up later and they tend to be add charges, right? So, you know, start with in the very beginning with any sort of contractor, and making sure that as much as you can try to understand what the project is, what the outline is, try to avoid those confrontations, so those conflicts up front. Ask a lot of questions. If you don't know, you know, look, I'm not too proud. I'll ask others that have been through a situation before. If it's a piece of software we're trying to have made or something, I'm not the software expert. Let me find expertise and try to get all those questions done beforehand, so there aren't that many conflicts. So always, you know, try to be clear about your projects and your goals. And then, you know, there are times when the contractor still is wrong. I mean, and you got to tell them that. Again, you got to be honest. You got to outline it. You got to document it. And you got to try to work through it. Again, it's that trying to understand both sides of the situation and doing your best to solve the issue. You know, at the end of the day, if you can't resolve it today, Yelp is your friend. You know, there's times when you're gonna have to say this contractor didn't do a job. So again, the last thing I try to do is not try to resolve it in an email. I try to have a conversation with that contractor or that person, resolve the issue. If you can't resolve the issue, document what those changes are or those issues are, and then put those into an email to make sure that you clarify the situation so it doesn't happen again.
The question that was raised was, you know, what do you do, or how do you handle like a former employee leaves your business and then goes out and either starts the business, you know, another one of their own, or they just go out and go to work for somebody else, but they're totally dissing you. Like they're totally saying bad things about you. They're spreading rumors, or, you know, speaking to even your customers, telling bad things. And so we had a small group discussion about that. And I think the one kernel of wisdom that came from that, and it came from Charlene, actually, the truth will prevail. So what you can do is just keep on keeping on. Don't let those buttons push you. If you can reach out to your customers and kill them with kindness and send more information out to them and prove who you are in the environment and not engage with that person, naturally, if you can have a conversation with them and it's not high stakes or something, it wouldn't be a bad thing. But honestly, people will see who you are over time. And you just have to, as she said, the truth will prevail. And you can just, you know, and this is in our personal life too, you know, because somebody can be out there spreading rumors about you. How do you manage that? And the truth is, you just have to keep being who you are.
Mike, did you guys have something you take away from your session?
So I did most of the talking, but I would say this: it's, you know, from a mentorship standpoint, is there was a lot of questions on how do you find, you know, there's a lot of people that say they want to be mentored, and but then they don't do the work, right? They don't want to be pulled along, and so that's tough. That's a tough question. I mean, you know, for every 5 people that say they want to be mentored, you know, you really find 1 or 2 that want to walk the walk and talk the talk. So, but when you do find those people, or when you do see that somebody says, hey, I want to do this, I try to share my experiences, and B, I try to one of the things I like to do is let them have an experience, throw them in the deep end sometimes, let them sink or swim, let them go after something. And sometimes they may get 70% of the way, or they may drown, but at least they've had that experience. I also try to share with everybody now any of the experiences I have. So whether that's a top brass coming from Ford Motor Company to the SEMA garage, I bring my whole staff in. I want them to meet that person. I want them to have that experience. Yesterday we had a meeting with the new head of the California Resources Board. I let my staff take the call. I let my staff, take the front line on those sorts of things, because I want them to have that experience. I've had more unbelievable opportunities in my life than I ever would have imagined when I was 17, and I want others to share in those now. And I want them to, while I'm there, maybe in the background to prop them up if I need to, but I want them to have those experiences. So, don't be afraid to let them have the spotlight or share the spotlight or be on that front line, knowing they may flub up a little bit, but they get that experience.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Thank you. Sherry, you are next.
Okay, so good segue, Mike, because that kind of leads a little bit into what we talked about in our group. And one of the questions that came up is, as a young female managing a team of people calling for product or taking calls, how do you manage if someone is older than you and has more experience than you, and they have doubts in you and you're managing them. So believe in yourself, empower your people. I've done it myself. Using the example of before I left Ford, I had a partner, and he really versed at ADOS. I knew enough about it, and I learned a lot from him. Because that's what he did before he came and worked with me. And he was really, really good. And I'm like, oh, that's his lane. And then he would do the same. Oh, that's her lane. Let her do it. And again, partnership, teamwork, mentoring each other are some of the key takeaways that we talked about. And then lead by example, and just believe in yourself. And you don't know, admit that you don't know, and find out, and then get the answer and express that to the rest of the team.
That is so true. Sometimes our pride gets in the way and we want to have the answers, and you got to be able to say, I don't have that answer. I'm willing to admit that, and let me figure that out. And
because we like Karen said and Mike said, that this is our tribe. This is our tribe of people. We work and we should use each other. That's why we are here in these networking councils and so on. And we go to SEMA is to network so that we can help each other. And I know that has been my success. I remember it was somebody, it wasn't even Melanie from Hellwig. It was one of her employees. She's no longer there, but it was the first SBN, the speed dating thing we did, networking thing. And I was so scared. I didn't know what to do, but that was the first kickoff thing that was the beginning to the end of where I'm at today. So networking is key and helping each other. And then I want to just mention one other quick takeaway. We talked about irate customers on calls, and the takeaway there is sometimes you have to treat those people who are on the other line like a kid, but an adult kid, and say, can we just pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and let's figure out what's going on here. I'd like to help you. And go back to like what Mike said. Sometimes you have to just pause, and you might not have the answer, but don't let someone degrade you over something.